Hey guys, welcome back to Heart of the Hero, Tools for Successful Minds. I'm Dan here with Greg. Just a little, like to talk about a little bit here. We like to talk about how we're gonna grow our consciousnesses and solve issues in different ways and areas that can affect our success and our self-development. What do we get into tonight, Greg?
Today, we are talking about the Holy Grail, the shortcut, the master key. It's your own consciousness. We're talking about how to sort of alleviate your own suffering. I think a lot of people are going to get benefit and value from this. It's going to enrich and enlighten your mind because essentially what we're talking about today is how you can rewire, re-educate, reorient your own mind, your own brain, your own self in a way that releases and reduces the amount of suffering that maybe you feel right now.
Mm. Yeah, I think people find this is an area that there's a lot of information. There's a lot of tactics, there's a lot of tips, there's a lot of ways about going about doing this, and we can only speak from experience and information standpoint, and what we think is actually important for you guys because depending on what you're going through, you might be feeling different things. You might be in a place where you're dealing with anxiety, you've had this certain type of life, which you got to deal with, very specific things, are going to trigger you. We all have individual problems because we're all individuals, and our lives and our DNA are all unique. And so the way we respond to problems, the way we remember things, a lot of affect our nature, our nurture affects the way that we actually do consciousness work, and the way you grow your mind and become more aware of a person, a more present person. And it can kind of feel like you're kind of getting your own toolkit. You're in a place where you're maybe dealing with something and you're looking for kind of that edge, that tool that just kind of helps just right to tightens up any loose bolts. I think there's there's actually two sides of this that I kind of want to cover, and one is the whole fix and rewire and construct that Greg's talking about, but I'm going to try to slip in a little bit of the whole separation and lack of that, which might lose you, and if it does, it's fine, because one day it might make sense and you'll understand.
Yeah, and I want to kind of illuminate right now uh, some really direct, specific ways you're going to know that this is an issue for you, because this is something that is probably the top priority, especially for myself, like as far as what I could present, like what I could give to you. If I were to die today and I was to give you some wisdom, right? One piece of advice, one piece of information, this would be it. Because the way that you interact with your own
A lot
mind,
of pressure, Greg.
it's a lot of pressure, but how else are you living? You're only living through your own experience, right? Through your own brain, your own mind. So I think going down this trail, this rabbit hole, and really opening this up for maybe someone who's suffering now or having experiences they don't necessarily like. I want to talk about some specific things that you're probably experiencing right now. If this is right for you, if you're ready for this, if you have that sensation of there's something more, but you don't necessarily know what it is, and you may not know how to find it. I want to name a couple of things right now. And the first thing is you are aware that the life that you're in right now is not the one you want to be in. And what I mean by that is, it's not that you don't appreciate where you're at. It's not that you don't appreciate your friends, your family. It's that you somewhere, you know that what's happening around you, what's happening inside your own mind, right? Maybe you have a negative thinking, or you feel bad often, or, something happens and you kind of get these sensations in your body, and you don't always know where they come from, but they're not pleasant. They feel very bad. Well, that all comes from the way that you interact with your own mind, the way you interact with your own life, your own world, right? And so when you step back and you really look inside and you look at where this is coming from, you'll start to notice, and you may be gradually noticing this now, but you'll start to notice that a lot of this starts in your own consciousness. It starts in your own head, your own mind, the way that you think about yourself, the way that you interact with other people, things that people say to you that really set you off, right? And there's something to be said about that, because you might be feeling a lot of these things right now, or you have in the past, and you could remember a time when that's happened, and you want to get out, but you don't know how. So maybe we could talk a little bit about identifying some of the really deep palpable things that people might be suffering with at the moment if they're present with us now and you know, in the community?
You know, I think it's safe to say that if, you know, you're here and you found this and you're watching this, that you're suffering of some sort, you know, whether it be individual to you, whether it be anxiety, depression, you can be suffering, like just dealing with these strong emotions. You can't seem to control yourself, anger issues, you know, whether it be, you know, you just want to get your life even just organized and your behavior. Because honestly, if you want to get your behavior in order, it doesn't actually matter, because there's certain things about our lives that determine what causes us suffering. Our situation, something about it's not working, whether it be internal or external. It's one of the other. And certain things and certain problems, cognitive issues versus emotional issues, those call for two different things, those two different types of attention. And so I think, you know, someone who's kind of at a place where they've been suffering and is looking for a way out, you know, often you'll find yourself in a place where you can't really go on any longer in the place that you're at. You've kind of hit this wall. You've kind of hit this, you're kind of fed up at some point where you've either become so depressed that you're worried about your safety of your own life, or you're so worried about the future that you can't go a minute in a day without having anxiety, and you're so fed up with it and you can't find peace. Essentially, you can't find that peace. You can't find that calm. You're always waiting for a time in your life to start working, and it's like, and you know, you can tell yourself, and you know, if you find yourself telling yourself that things are going to get better, oh, when this happens, and then when this happens, and then when this happens, and if you're constantly pushing that to different things, and when you get things that you're expecting to alleviate some suffering and they don't, and you just move that to another thing and move blame. I used to do that all the time. You know, when I was younger, I had crippling anxiety, and I say younger, but it wasn't actually until a little while ago now that I had actually dealt with this. It was an issue that I thought at one point in my adolescence that I was going to deal with for the rest of my life. But when I was younger, you know, I had all these concepts in my head, these perceptions that, you know, when I was teenage, maybe 15, you know, I was like, you know, when I get out of high school, or when I get into high school, like, it'll be all cool. Like, I'll have everything together. I'll be getting grades. I'm playing on the sports team. I'm doing all these things. It's gonna be cool, you know. And then, like, those things happened, and some of them, and I didn't, and I still had suffering. I still had this anxiety, still this issue that I was dealing with just in my life. This dissatisfaction, this discontentment. This isn't enough. I want more. I don't want this. This doesn't feel good. You know, all those type of feelings. You know, and at one point, when I was doing all those things, I was like, all right, well, when I get into college, all this will be figured out. I mean, I'll be like an adult, you know, I'll have all this figured out. I'll be going to school. I don't have to deal with any of these people. I don't care about these teachers. I'm going to junior college anyway. You know, like, I was in this mindset, and so I was, and I got there, and guess what? Like, I was still going through this kind of same issues, different day, different year of my life, and I could go down each one of these over the next 10 years of, you know, 8 years of my life. But the point is that there was always this blame that I placed my suffering on that never pointed towards me. That never said I need to actually look in and understand it, or understand why I feel a certain way, and build a self-awareness, maybe change my behavior in some ways. You know, like, it was always out. It was always other things' fault, other people's fault, you know. And so if you find yourself blaming your life situation a lot of times in other people, you might be in a situation where you're ready for some change, and you're ready to actually make a move in the right direction. And you know, so some of those signs and those indicators of feelings of discontentment, is not satisfied and unable to actually accept your current situation. Those are good signals that you need to pay attention, because you only get one future, and you want to invest now so you can actually have the most out of that time and take care of some of these issues in the future, and even in the recent future, because it's possible to deal with some of these major issues that you might be struggling with if you're committed quickly.
Yeah, and I think there's this idea that things that you're going to have to work towards, or work with, or work on they're like this heavy thing, like you got this boulder on your shoulders and it's crushing you. But it's not really a good way to look at it, honestly. If you started to imagine where you might be right? Where you might be if you could deal with this stuff and it could just be gone just like that. Well, how would you feel? Like, how would you feel differently? Would you act differently? Would you walk differently? Right? It gives you this freedom from yourself, your life, the situation that you're in. And essentially a more useful way to think about some of the things that we're talking about, and maybe the things that you're thinking about right now, are this is a door, right? This is a fork in the road. It's an opportunity. It's sometimes in life you get these alarm systems, right? And Dan had talked about, some of the things you might be feeling, or, kind of pointing to some indicators about why you're suffering. Well, each of those individual things, it's an alarm system. It's telling you, hey, 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 pay attention to this, pay attention to this, pay attention. Maybe we could work on this. Maybe we could deal with this. Maybe there's a way out of this. Maybe there's a way to be free of how you feel right now. Well, I think a big mind shift that has to happen, and it does have to happen. You have to confirm and choose this for yourself. But a big mind shift that happens to move beyond this point where you can see this future, you can see the things that you want kind of dangling in front of you, right? It's the carrot on the stick, but you don't have enough energy to move towards it yet because you're kind of floating in the center. You have to make the decision. You have to choose, okay, this is worth it to me. This is worth whatever I need to do to make this happen, because I know that if I can get rid of the way that I'm feeling right now, if I can change this suffering, if I can rewire this feeling, if I can get rid of these people in my life who are keeping me down, or the situations that I'm surrounded in, or the things that are oppressing me, if I can get rid of these things, my life would be so much better. I could feel so much better. And I think it's important to really recognize that a lot of what's actually going to stop you, and it could be happening now. You could be thinking, well, this is stupid, or, well, this could, you could be thinking all kinds of things that are creating resistance for you right now. But really key in on that, really bring your attention in here, because the number one things that are going to keep you from taking action, even in a small way, even thinking about what we're talking about as far as consciousness or changing your state, your area, like where you live, maybe reorienting, rewiring, all of these things. The number one thing that's going to stop you is your external environment, because what happens is your environment is making you think certain things. Maybe you have a friend or a family member or someone you knew in your past, in your history, or, you have someone that you do things with, or maybe it's not even a person. Maybe you have a hobby. Maybe you do something that you do like, but you don't need to be doing. Maybe you procrastinate, right? These are things in your environment that are making you think, well, I could go do this. Well, this isn't worth it to me right now. Well, this doesn't matter to me right now. But you need to understand, because this is a decision. It's a decision you can make at any time you want. You need to understand that if you interact with those things right now, if you decide, I'm going to go do this, I'm going to go here, I don't need this. This is not useful to me. I don't need to work on anything. This suffering is not that big of a deal. You're going to be right back here tomorrow. You're going to be right back here the next day. You're going to feel this way because it didn't go anywhere. It didn't get dealt with. You didn't change the situation you're in enough to where you actually feel like you're at peace and happy and free.
Yeah, and there's two ways. I have a confliction in me, because I want to give two different types of advice, because I actually think both are productive depending on where someone's at in their self-development and where you're at mentally. Some of these concepts that I can give you and we're going to give you are sometimes going to seem a little like, what? And we don't really care, because the human mind is a tricky, messy, sticky place when you dive in and you actually try to figure stuff out. And when you go to a level of awareness and just presence, things change. But at first, there's this rewiring process, right? You kind of heard that term around. You've kind of, cognitive behavioral therapy you might have heard of. These ideas of restructuring the patterning of your brain, the cognition, the faulty cognition that you have, bad habits, like Greg said, procrastinating, or being, or self-hating thoughts, or self-defeating thoughts, self-doubt, being a flaky person, canceling. Just shirking responsibilities. These are habits. These are patterns that you've built over your life. So you can actually re-pattern your mind, and it's not a surgical, spiritual process at all. all, it's simply understanding the concepts of conditioning and how the brain works. And your brain recognizes patterns. It's a habitual thing. Your subconscious feeds your conscious thought. Your subconscious is simply just your store bank of memories and things that have happened in your life, and how you've perceived them, emotions, pictures, all these things. And when you go through things during the day, you actually interact with these memories, these constructs in your own head. Now, when you get to a place where you can reach a certain, I'd say step one for rewiring, if we're just going to kind of get in and give you a good taste of what you need to do off the bat, is it would be a self-awareness exercise and self-inquiry. Things like getting to know yourself viscerally. Try to understand things about yourself that you didn't think you could before. Try to understand yourself and learn things about yourself that will help you and give you information to repattern your life. If you can see as much about who you are from an unbiased perspective, and actually be honest and truthful with yourself for the sake of fixing the things that you want to fix in your life, it gives you a clear picture of your pattern. You know yourself, you know your habits, you know where you fall short, you know what you got to work on, you know what you're good at, and you know where you want to go. And that's what happens. And that just in itself gives you a certain amount of confidence and in the ability to actually direct your life and take control of your life. And I'd say that awareness is the first step of that. What would you say, Greg, after somebody gets awareness? Like, what would you then say if you had a good, like, healthy dose of, okay, this is who I am, after they've written it down, they have it on paper? What would you say after that? You think that would be the next step in rewiring, restructuring, however wording you use it?
Go deeper. Go deeper. Go deeper, go deeper, go deeper. There is no end. I mean, there's this idea that once you learn about yourself, right? Let's say if I told you maybe and this is to reduce your suffering, right? To whatever you're dealing with now, to get rid of it. If I told you, go write down the 10 things about yourself that you hate the most. Go write down the 10 things about yourself that you don't like, right? The things that you just really make you kind of cringe, things that you do, ways that you feel about yourself, and you wrote them down, right? And you wrote them down, you put them on a page, and you said, okay, 1 through 10, blah, 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 right? Maybe one of them is procrastination, because that's a pretty basic one, right? No one's going to get too ruffled about that. Let's say that you procrastinate. Boom, number 3, right? Well, you're going to look at that, and a person would say, oh, great, I'm self-aware. I know I procrastinate. Awesome. This is great. But the problem is there are layers to this shit. It goes deeper, right? You could actually ask yourself.
I didn't think you were going to say it.
You could ask yourself, why do I procrastinate? What is the reason that I choose to procrastinate? Or better, how do I feel?
Yeah.
That's right. It's even better, right? So you can look at this single thing from a whole bunch of different ways, and it lets you get deeper and deeper and deeper into understanding what's actually driving you at your core, at the bottom level, right? And this is deep work, right? It's stuff you can do later, you could do now, you could start, but ultimately there's really not an end. It's almost like when you have a system, right? A computer, or, a game that you like, or, some craft project you like to work on. Maybe you play a sport, right? You wouldn't say that a professional basketball, football, hockey, whatever your sport is, a professional in that area, right? And you could think of your favorite person. You wouldn't say that they are the best they can be ever, because that's the point. You would say that they have peaks, right? And maybe they have times when they're doing better than other times, but ultimately you can go as far as you want to go. You can go as deep as you want to make it. Now, one of the things that kind of you'll feel better about, right, is that let's say there's 2 layers or 3 layers, whatever, however many you want to say, right? Well, as you knock those off, as you get through, okay, so I procrastinate, and the reason I procrastinate is because I don't know what I want to do. Okay, well, that's a problem you can solve now. That's something that's like, oh, this is it. Like, that's easy. Like, okay, so I just tackle this one thing. And if you tackle that one thing, what does that do? You feel better. You have more options. You have more energy. You get to look around and say, man, like, this is good. That's self-awareness, the process of cracking yourself open and actually seeing what's in your own consciousness. Now, listen, this is where you're going to feel this resistance. You're going to be thinking, oh my God, this is a whole lot of work. It's not, though. It's really not, because you're already doing this right now. And I'll show you how. So you might think, let's say you have a conversation with someone at work, or a friend or a family member, right? And something happens. It could be anything. So something happens and it upsets you, it irritates you, right? You could feel it in your chest, right? You don't like it. Well, the thing you've got to notice is that you are actually working on your own awareness without even knowing it, because you're interacting with that, right? They make you mad and you're thinking, man, they made me so mad. I don't like that they did this. This is so stupid. This is so horrible. Ah, this is so terrible. Why would they do that? I feel terrible. They did this. It's their fault. Well, all that you're doing is you're putting in more patterns. You're getting more habits built to where if someone does that to you, if they interact with you, you're going to meet someone in the store, right? Maybe your family member, they yelled at you, right? They yelled at you and you didn't like it and you had a reaction and whatever. But 3 years later, 2 years later, you're at a grocery store, you're doing yoga, right? You're out wherever it is that you go, and someone comes up to you and they do something really, really similar. They're yelling at you and they're treating you badly, and it takes you back. It takes you back, and you remember, oh, this is what my family did to me. This is what my family member did to me. I didn't like that when that happened. Now, this isn't all conscious, right? It's not all conscious, but you're going to have the same reaction. You're going to, I don't like this. I hate this person. And you're going to have assumptions about them, and you're going to be thinking thoughts about them. Well, that's because you've set a pattern. You've taken on habits of thinking about something in a certain way. So all you need to understand, and this is where the suffering really gets to be something that you can control, something that you could be free of. You could actually release your own suffering by starting to notice, what are your patterns? What are your patterns? What are you thinking about? What do you feel like on a day-to-day basis? Most people don't pay attention to these things because you think, well, this doesn't matter. I'm doing whatever I'm doing. Like, I'm fine. But are you? Are you comfortable where you're at? Do you feel good about yourself? When you look in the mirror, can you stare into your own eyes and not flinch? That comes from a place of peace and understanding who you actually are. Now, this is something you can choose to do or not do. And I like to say this a lot because no one's making you do this. No one's making you even look into this at all. You can do anything that you want. That's the beauty of being alive. But if you want to stop suffering, maybe this is something for you.
You know, there's a side, there's one thing that I like to remind, and I'm going to sideball here, and this might confuse some, make sense to a lot, but you got to kind of remember that this is all a construct in your mind. We put some identity. We put some identity to ourselves, and it's good to rewire. It's good. It's healthy. I've done it. So did Greg. We've done it, and it's healthy, and it helps. It moves us forward in a lot of ways. But along the way, you kind of learn, once you're able to rewire this thing so much to look like such a different person, you start to kind of realize, like, well, who have I been? Like, who am I? If I can just rewire all this, like, is this even real? And it's not. And that's a difficult concept for some people to grasp. It is something that is experientially real, as in we all have memories and this identity. We all have some egoic attachments in some way or the other. We have some theories that we'll not get into right now about what a life would look like if you had reached kind of full ego death, is what they call that. It's a weird, freaky phrase that I have a lot of resistance even saying on air. But ego separation is a very important thing. It's something that actually allows for alleviation of suffering, and you can go either route. Really, you can build your self-awareness, go deeper, and then start building like a plan of how to, like, if, for instance, like if you have thoughts that keep tormenting you, right? And you have this pattern of, like, you hit a thought and then you spiral down this just terrible road, right? Well, rewiring and CBT would kind of beg the question, is there anything else that we can think every time you think this other thought that will prevent you from and just going down this terrible place? It's thought replacement, it's thought diffusion. These aren't original concepts. This is psychological studies. This is what therapists do, a lot of them, and it's to repattern that idea of putting a new thought in to affect the pattern of your mind that it normally goes on. Is like thought, you're injecting a thought that prevents you from your mind from going somewhere, right? That's rewiring, that's restructuring, that's cool. But you got to remember that that's if you had a mop and you change the mop head, and then you change the handle, and then you change the mop head, and then you change the mop head again, and then you replace the handle. Is it even the same mop? I mean, you know, how many, once every 7 years, all of the cells in our bodies regenerate?
Pull that on my head.
You don't even, your brain doesn't even get fully done developing until you're 25.
And you want to hear something wild? This is the wild part that I don't think people puzzle this together, because you may not believe what he's saying right now. You may not believe, like, okay, yeah, the great, but like but I want to point you to something that's already happened to you that you can actually just look at, remember, and verify in your own life, and you'll say, oh, yeah, I guess. What was it like for you when you were like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11? What were you thinking? How did you walk? How did you move? How did you speak? What did you spend most of your time doing? And if you were to go back and you were to look at that life versus who you are now, who is that? Who is that person? Because if I took a snapshot, right, of that life, and I said, here's what that life looks like, here's what this 15-year-old thinks, this is what they think about the world, this is what you think about the world, this is what you think you are, this is what you think you're capable of, this is what you think people will do to you and people that you can do to other people, how you think you interact with other friends, relationships, money. You have all these beliefs, you have all these things that happen when you're 15, when you're 16, when you're 12, when you're 19. And then as you grow, right, in the same way that when you're 5, you don't really have the same beliefs as when you're 11. Of course not. That would be ridiculous. You're growing. Well, if every moment, if every year, if every week, day, you're replacing parts of yourself, you're replacing the way that you think, the way that you feel, you're changing your perspectives about certain things, you're learning about politics or religion or whatever it is that really kind of gets you going, you're reorienting. Well, how can you actually say that you're exactly the same as you were then? You have changed. You're constantly changing. So the thing to understand, and once you continue to, repattern and maybe think about your own self-awareness and stuff, is that you are constantly changing. And this is something that you can embrace, because what does that mean for you? Well, if you think about it, if you were to think about it, what you'll notice is that the ability to change actually makes you free. We have this thought sometimes that you're stuck where you are. You're stuck in the life that you're in. You're stuck in the brain that you're in.
Who you are.
Right. And when you let that go and you're like, okay, like I'm changing, like I'm whatever, like I'm going to take on some new beliefs, or I'm going to question the belief that I have here. Maybe this one isn't right. And you constantly just do that. You'll notice you can be whoever you want. You can go wherever you want. That's a very different feeling than most people get in their entire lives.
This is so funny because I had so much resistance at first to talking about this stuff, and it feels so natural. And right now, this is kind of the battle me and Greg have sometimes. And it's not really a battle because we're pretty aligned in our thinking and agreement. We don't really have disagreements, and if we do, they're discussed at length because it's interesting that we disagree because we kind of agree on a lot of the same stuff, right? And so, but one of the battles is like he's this hyper construct guy, like the map and the maze and the stuff he does in his mind, like is just so eccentrically like intricate. Like he can really map this stuff out and restructure so well. Versus I kind of just like ask like, who is that? Like, what is that? Identify that. Is that thing even real? Like, and super unhelpful, unproductive things for a conversation, but they're very good things to actually talk about. Like, because when he says you can be whoever you want, imagine an actor, when actors, especially good ones, take on a role, they go into that character. If you watch behind the scenes stuff in movies, you'll see that they are that character on set and in their trailer and getting makeup done. They are that character, and not always, but the better ones are at times they take on this persona. Heath Ledger, I think, overdosed on sleeping pills because he was so haunted by the character of the ghost of the Joker, because he had gone so deep in. Now, granted, we don't have the explanation, but that was the theory that was everybody kind of assumed. I mean, if you watch that movie, you're like, yeah, like, yeah, you kind of killed that role, no pun intended. But like, it's this it's this character that we've been building. You know, that we've been playing this role, and it has rules, and it has ways of thinking, it has ways that it responds to things, and ways that it handles suffering. And a lot of times those constructs are patterned against you in those moments, because we're not usually all inherently good at handling suffering or handling pain or handling difficult times. And so you have this kind of the reaction based on the way you've been reacting. And usually it's a poor reaction. So we have these, you know, you have a physiological reaction where you actually feel sick or tense, or, you know, your stomach turns over, or, you know, you're getting, you know, anxious, and, you know, you're sad and you're crying, or you're frowning, and your body kind of has all these patterns that it does. It recognizes, like, oh, he's doing all these things, he's sad. Like, and you react to that because that's the way your mind works. It builds this construct. You've been building this character, not consciously. That's the same thing as saying you grew up. Okay, like, you have beliefs, you have opinions. That's the same thing as saying I've been building a character. Do you know the word person? It actually comes from the Greek words, I think it's para, and that's through. And sona, which is sound. And so no, it's para is through, and then sona is sound. And so person actually in persona means the mask that sound comes through. And so I don't know if I butchered that enough for you to understand, but essentially, like, you build this mask and you speak through it. This is how you speak now. This is how you react to things. You don't even think of it that way. It just feels like, but these are thoughts in my head. But no, but this is stuff that's coming from me. No, this is a gut feeling. Do you know most of your gut feelings are actually just chemicals? Like, people hate talking about this, but, like, you know, emotions are actually just chemicals and hormones, right? Like, not necessarily, I'm not saying they're not real, because something transcendent happens to make that happen. Our consciousness responds to certain things in a way that elicits something that we've labeled as emotions. But what we've labeled as emotions is actually physically the releasing of endorphins, serotonin, oxytocin, dopamine, adrenaline, all types of things. And we label those as emotions, and we say that there's emotions and it's a thing. These are real, but they're not real. They're ideas. They're responses as a person. It's a personal response to things that happen in our life. Now that gets unproductive, and so I want Greg to bring it back a little bit here and see if we can.
I'm gonna really, because that's a beautiful concept.
Can't sit there for too long, or we're gonna lose viewers.
Let me package that for you, because all that he's talking about, it already makes sense to you, but you may not have words to describe it. So let's think about it like this, okay? Everything that you do in life, you could imagine as a toolbox, right? It's a toolkit. Your brain is a toolkit. It's a toolbox. Your world, your character, your personhood, who you are, your personality, it's a toolbox. And what happens is you have certain tools that you do and don't like, right? So maybe you have a belief and you like it, and you kind of run around with it, and you're like, yeah, you know, I believe this should happen, and people should do this, and this is how I believe. And you play around with it, and you take this screwdriver, and you're kind of going showing people, look, I have a screwdriver. Look, I have a screwdriver. Look at this, guys. You guys like this? Do you think of it? And someone's like, that's a stupid screwdriver. That's a dumb screwdriver. You should get rid of it. And because they're your friends and because they're people that you know, you're like, yeah, that is kind of a stupid screwdriver. Throw it out. You have this whole toolbox, big red toolbox, where you're constantly putting things inside of it. You're constantly taking, do I like this? Yes. Do I like this? Yes. And you put it in this box and you close it up and you're like, this is me. This is who I am. But it's not, because they're just tools. There is no actual coherent toolbox. It's just a box of individual tools. So in the same way, you, the person, right, the consciousness, and this is where it gets kind of esoteric and out there, I get it, but just pay attention for a second, because this is how you relieve suffering. This is how you alleviate those feelings you don't want to have anymore. You have to recognize, you have to distance yourself and say, okay, I am not my thoughts. They're just happening. They're things that I'm thinking. You're doing them for sure. Absolutely. It is you. But like, if you think I like mustard or I'm sad, what's the difference? What is the difference between those two? Well, the only difference is that one of them you're saying actually matters more than the other one, which makes sense because you've had all these experiences where it's like, right. So it's this sensation that you can actually distance yourself from believing that's what you are. And it gives you this kind of freedom emotionally.
Yeah. And see, that's because I was wanting to get back. I was wanting to circle it back because like we did rabbit trail here, but it was important.
Right.
Because we wanted to tell you the difference, and we kind of, we can give you I can give you something that, okay, like I call flag posting. This is a restructure thing. I'm going to go back into actually rewiring here for a second. I call this flag posting, where essentially that thought that comes to your mind, say you have a self-hating thought, something that causes you to start thinking all this certain ways, or causes you to go to an anxiety and have panic attack, or makes you depressed when you start thinking about all this stuff, some kind of thought that pushes that boulder over the edge of the hill and gets it rolling for you. What I want you to do is I want you to pick like top 2-3 thoughts that you can think of. You know them because they cause you suffering.
Right.
You know them. Be honest with yourself. You know them. Just give yourself time. Make sure that the real one's the number one, the top 3, right? And don't even worry about all 3 of them at once. We're just gonna talk about the one, right? The major one, the number one, and you know which one that is. You'll be like, yeah. And it's the first one you write down probably because you're just like, yeah, I really don't want to deal with this anymore. Like this is the number one I'm thinking about right now. Take that thought, take that idea, take that emotion, right? And memorize it. And I want you to come up with a way, a thought, a phrase, a statement of truth. Not just a statement of bullshit. I want you to pick something that actually means something to you, procs emotion, and actually makes you feel good, makes you happy, whatever, a happy thought. This is Peter freaking Pan. You need to think a happy thought, okay? I'm literally saying that to you. Take a happy thought, take something that's motivating, something that deflates that negative vibe, that negative intent of that other thought, right? Now write that below it. Write that right below it, because what you're going to do is when that thought comes up the next time, and it will, because it's something that comes up probably pretty often if you're listening to this video still and learning about how to rewire your brain and such. The next time that comes up, I want you to, what you will, remember the other thought and think it. That's all you have to do. Just think that thought. Of 8 20-word sentence, think it. That's all you have to do. Literally all you have to do. Now, granted, I would encourage you to try to actually feel it, kind of give it a little, a little extra mustard, because, add some emotion in there, add some passion, some, I'm serious about this, some grit, because that kind of plants the idea firmer in your brain. It's not just hokey, that's science. They teach that in memory coding. The more you, anyway, the idea here is if you do this, negative thought comes up, boop. I think the other thought was some, 2 hours later, negative thought comes up, boop. Think this other thought, little grit, little behind it, right? And you do this over and over and over and over and over again, nonstop. And honestly, the first, I don't know, I can't even say this, but for me, the first like 12 times I said it to myself, like it just did nothing. Like, and maybe even in between that another little while, because what's happening is you're repatterning your brain. And after a while, what'll happen is you won't have to think about it. It'll come up. You're going to think this negative thought and boop, that other thought is in there with it. And what gives you then in that moment is a choice. This isn't done for you. This isn't solved for you. You still have to choose, because you can choose to go the negative way. This is the red pill or the blue pill. Like one takes you further down the rabbit hole. The other one sends you home. I mean, like that's the home is alleviation from suffering, I suppose. I don't know that waking up from the Matrix was not. Anyway, I'm not going down there. The idea is you have a choice. You have these 2 thoughts in your brain, now. You don't just have this one that's dominating your head. You have 2 now, and one is a really good one. So you have a choice. Which one are you going to go with? Which one are you going to allow yourself to feel? Because if you've done it correctly, you've picked something that actually has an emotional attachment and feel from you, and you've kind of been doing with a little knit and grit, and that's going to pattern and be remembered in your brain. So the next time you feel that, you're going to feel that little bit of extra. And that's the idea. You're conditioning your mind to bring this second thought that's a diffusing, neutralizing, helpful, motivating, inspiring alleviating thought that gives you that moment to choose whether you're going to choose this thought or this thought, red pill or blue pill. I take both. I don't.
Yeah, look, this is a putty knife. This is a Swiss Army knife, right? Like we're gonna go deeper into this, and as we continue, I think we might do a series, something about consciousness. Like we're really opening this up. But here's the thing: it's all a decision, right? It's all a choice. You have to actually start working on this consistently. It doesn't have to be every second, right? But in the same way that you would study for school, well, you got to kind of study your own self, study your own self-awareness, your own mind, and it's really going to determine where you end up in life, whether you're successful, whether you're not, whether you get the relationships you want, whether you don't, because you'll notice the people who are kind of ruled by this monster in their head are the exact kind of people you don't want to be around. They're always angry. They're always negative. They're always just depressing and just, oh, you don't want to hear their stuff because they're just, oh, life sucks. And right. You don't want to be around those people. And if you are that person, I don't know what to tell you. You got to work on it, right? You got to
make it this far if you're that person. I just want to know that. Like,
right, yeah, you probably have resistance.
You've got like mega balls if you made it this far as that person.
No, I can't even imagine how a person. So we could do this all night. This is the ultimate thing. This is the number one thing you can work on to actually get what you want in life, to get where you want to go. It's your own consciousness. It's your own experience of reality, your mind, your life, right? So stick around, stay tuned. But I think, Dan, you should leave them with something, because you have a little more insights onto sort of seeing the landscape of in actually being in your own mind, I think, than I do. So maybe if they plug these in, right, they've done these things, what's the kick they need?
Well, I mean, you've got this in your mind. If you have a practice for your mind, if your thoughts are a little more emotional, then sorry, this video has been a little more cognitive. Emotions are a big thing for us, so we'll cover them too. Unfortunately, it's just kind of two different fields of consciousness work, and one's really messy, the other seems to be simple and refined. It's the best way I can describe it, and I think all of you know what I mean, and which one is which. And so cognitive consciousness work is a little bit more like conditioning and in psychology. You know, you're not really fighting some spiritual battle. You're not really fighting some messy feelings. Make you dumb, dude, man. Like, feelings make you stupid and make dumb decisions about your life. And when you're out of control, they can be powerful and they can be damaging and they can be strong and overwhelming and just visceral and toxic and vile, and thoughts lead us all there. And so to me, work on your brain first, because that's the kind of stuff that'll prevent you from even having to go there to those negative, strong, toxic places, hurtful places, the suffering. So you work on your brain and you can learn to kind of stay in this space. Now, the space is absent this person of you, this idea of you. You know, people talk about meditation and that, how they feel so at peace. Another way that I'd like to say it is they've kind of found that space. There's a space in your mind in between thoughts. You know, like, have you ever been listening to somebody and you really aren't thinking anything? You're just listening exactly to them. It's because there's a space in between your two thoughts. You're not thinking anything. You're totally attentive to what they're saying. There's a space. And you can actually find that space if you can learn to separate yourself from this identity that you've built. And don't worry, it doesn't mean it's gone. You won't forget who you are. It doesn't mean it's not real. It's in some weird manifesting way real, because it's there and we're experiencing it. But we get so attached to the people's view of ourselves. Success of this person, I and Dan and me and everything I am means things, and I have to accomplish those things, and if I don't, I'm upset and I'm not successful, and that sucks. And it's all these concepts and stuff that can be really enjoyable. And what is really life is about, we kind of grew this ego and grew this ability to have these complex consciousnesses over time, whether it be evolutionary or just, you know, last 100 years, we kind of took off. And we have these beautiful minds, and they betray us because they're so infinitely complex, and we try to control them and think that we can, or ignore them and think we know what we're doing. And honestly, consciousness work mentally, this is probably my final word. The main chunk of consciousness work at first is just undoing all the crap that you've already set up for yourself to clean up. Like, you're basically just paying for their mistakes, not in a negative way, because it feels good as you're going through it, and hard sometimes. But it's rewarding. That's the thing. And you can see progress. This is something that has quick effects. This is something that actually works if you just commit and do it. I promise you, if you found out exactly what your number one issue was, top 3 thoughts that you suffer with, wrote them down, and had thoughts to diffuse all of those and neutralize those, you would see results within days. But only if you commit, only if you actually do, only if you actually do, because no one's coming to save you. You can continue to do everything the way that you've been doing it, but we all know how that goes. So either rewire your brain in a way that helps you be productive with it, or learn to separate from it. We don't care. We're going to show you how to do both. We just hope that it helps.
All right, guys. We'll see you soon.